The moment I lifted my ex-girlfriend into my arms, I knew agreeing to drive her home had been a mistake. Not because she was heavy, she wasn't. Not because I was still angry with her. I wasn't sure I had enough anger left for that. The mistake was how familiar it felt. Claire Morgan hooked one arm around my shoulders while I carried her up the walkway toward her parents' house. Her injured ankle held carefully away from my leg. Rain from an earlier storm still glistened on the pavement, and she was trying not to laugh every time I adjusted my grip. "You're enjoying this," I said. "I sprained my ankle. You're smiling. Because you look terrified. I'm carrying my ex-girlfriend into her parents' house at 11 at night. Your mother already thinks I ruined your life once." "Technically, I ruined yours first. Helpful." We reached the porch. Claire searched her purse for the key, then winced when I shifted her slightly. "Sorry. Don't drop me. I wasn't planning to. You planned a lot of things that didn't work out." "Claire, sorry." She found the key. Before she could use it, the front door opened. Her mother stood there in a bathrobe, staring at Claire in my arms and then at me. For 3 long seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Patricia Morgan said, "I knew it." Claire closed her eyes. "Mom, you two are back together." "No," I said immediately. Claire said, "It's complicated." At exactly the same time. Patricia's eyebrows rose. I looked at Claire. "Complicated?" She whispered, "Please just get me inside." What I didn't know was that by morning, her mother's misunderstanding would force Claire and me to confront the truth we had spent almost 2 years avoiding. Before I tell you how we got there, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy stories about second chances, old wounds, and two people discovering that a breakup doesn't always mean the feelings disappeared. And leave a comment telling me whether you would help an ex who called you late at night, because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't seeing someone again. It's realizing they still feel like home. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 37 years old, lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and managed commercial construction projects for a regional development company. Claire Morgan was 35 and worked as a pediatric occupational therapist at a rehabilitation center outside the city. We had dated for 4 years, lived together for almost 2, and spent approximately 18 months talking about marriage without ever getting close enough to the subject to actually choose it. When people asked why we broke up, the simplified answer was that Claire received an offer to direct a new pediatric therapy program in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I refused to move. That was factually true and emotionally incomplete. The real problem had started long before Charlotte. Claire and I were good together in all the visible ways. We laughed, we traveled, we liked each other's families. We didn't have screaming arguments or dramatic betrayals. We paid bills on time, bought groceries together, and could spend an entire Sunday doing nothing without becoming bored. What we were terrible at was uncertainty. Claire wanted to know where a relationship was going before investing further. I wanted to know whether a decision was practical before attaching emotion to it. At first, those habits balanced each other. Later, they became weapons. When Claire brought up marriage, I asked about finances and housing. When I brought up buying a larger place, Claire asked whether that meant I was proposing. When her career opportunities required travel, I acted supportive while quietly resenting the disruption. When my projects consumed weekends, Claire said she understood until resentment appeared 3 weeks later in a completely unrelated argument. We loved each other. We also kept score without admitting we were keeping it. The Charlotte offer arrived during the worst possible period. My company had just promoted me to senior project manager and given me responsibility for a downtown hotel redevelopment worth more than $80 million. Claire's rehabilitation center had been reorganized after losing funding, and she had spent months frustrated that administrators who barely understood clinical work controlled every important decision. Charlotte offered her exactly what she wanted: leadership, funding, autonomy, and the chance to design a therapy program from scratch. She told me about the opportunity after her second interview. "They want me to come back next week," she said over dinner. "For what?" "Final interview." "Final!" I put down my fork. "How long has this been happening?" "3 weeks. You interviewed twice without telling me." I didn't want to create a crisis before I knew whether it was real. That sentence became the first crack, and so now it's real enough for me to know? "Daniel, I'm asking." "Yes. Do you want it?" Claire hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Yes." "Charlotte." "Yes." "That's 7 hours away?" "I'm aware." "What are you asking me?" "Whether we could talk about what it would mean, meaning whether I would move." "Possibly." My project just started. I know. My entire career is here. I know. Then what exactly are we discussing? Claire looked at me with an expression I would understand only much later. Whether there's any version of our future where my career gets to be the thing we build around. I heard accusation instead of fear. Your career matters. That isn't what I asked. You want me to resign from a project I spent 10 years working toward? I asked whether you would consider moving. That's not consideration, that's blowing up my life. Claire stood. And moving for your work would be what? A minor adjustment? I never asked you to move. Exactly. She walked away from dinner. Neither of us understood then that the argument was not about Charlotte. It was about 4 years of both of us waiting to see who would be willing to risk more. Claire accepted the job. I stayed in Nashville. We attempted long distance for 4 months and failed in the most boring way possible. Flights and drives became exhausting. My construction schedule changed constantly. Claire worked 12-hour days launching the new program. Video calls became updates. Visits carried too much pressure because we believed every limited weekend had to prove the relationship was worth saving. The final conversation happened in our old apartment, which by then was mostly mine. Claire had driven in for the weekend. Sunday afternoon, she stood beside 2 boxes of belongings she had come to collect. We should stop, she said. The distance? Us. Those aren't the same thing. They are right now. I can visit more. You said that last month. The project was delayed. I know. Then why are you making it sound like I chose not to come? Because every conversation turns into a defense before I finish the sentence. I stared at her. So that's it? Claire's eyes filled. No, Daniel, that's the problem. It hasn't been it for a long time. We keep ending conversations without ending anything. Do you still love me? She looked away. Yes. Then why are we breaking up? Because loving you has become a reason to postpone deciding whether we actually want the same life. I hated that sentence because I couldn't disprove it. She left that evening. I didn't stop her. For the first 6 months after the breakup, I turned work into a personality. The hotel project consumed enough hours to make avoidance easy. I arrived before sunrise, left after dark, and volunteered for weekend inspections that could easily have been handled by someone else. Claire and I exchanged occasional messages about practical things, mail, a kitchen appliance she had left, the dog we had nearly adopted before deciding neither schedule could handle it. Birthdays passed with polite texts. Christmas passed without one. Eventually, the silence became normal. Then, almost a year after our breakup, Claire came back to Nashville. I learned from her younger brother, Matt, who happened to work for an electrical subcontractor on one of my projects. We were reviewing change orders when he said, "Claire's moving back next month." I looked up too quickly. What? Matt immediately regretted speaking. I assumed you knew. Why would I know? Right, sorry. Why is she coming back? You should ask her. Matt. Family rule, I stay out. You brought it up. Mistake. He returned to the drawings. I pretended my hands hadn't stopped moving. 2 weeks later, Claire texted me. I'm back in Nashville. I thought you should hear that from me eventually, rather than accidentally. I stared at the message for almost an hour before responding. Matt beat you by 2 weeks. Her reply came immediately. Of course he did. Then, coffee sometime? I said yes. We met at a cafe we had never visited while dating. Neutral territory, although neither of us admitted that was why we chose it. Claire looked mostly the same and completely different. Her hair was shorter. She wore glasses I had never seen. She seemed more settled inside herself. You look good, she said. You too. That was painfully formal. I'm out of practice talking to ex-girlfriends. How many do you normally maintain? Small portfolio. She laughed, and for a second the lost year disappeared. Then reality returned. Why did you come back? I asked. Claire wrapped both hands around her coffee. The Charlotte program merged with another hospital network. You lost the job? No, they offered me a regional position. That sounds better. It was better on paper. And? I didn't want it. Because Nashville? Partly. Family? Yes. Her parents still lived 20 minutes outside the city. Her father had undergone heart surgery 6 months earlier. Dad's doing well, but it changed things. I'm sorry I didn't know. Why would you? The question was gentle, not accusatory. We weren't talking. I know. Anything else? Claire looked at me. I missed my patients here. I missed my friends. Then, after a pause, I missed my life. I wanted to ask whether I had been part of what she meant. I didn't. We talked for another hour. She had accepted a leadership position at a nonprofit pediatric therapy clinic. I told her the hotel project was finally finishing. We both avoided relationships until Claire asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" No, recently. A few dates. Anyone serious? No. Why? Work. She smiled slightly. Still using that? Apparently. I dated someone in Charlotte. My stomach tightened in a way that annoyed me. Serious? 6 months. What happened? He wanted to move to Atlanta. I laughed before I could stop myself. Claire stared at me, then started laughing too. I know. That's almost cruelly funny. Trust me, I appreciated the irony. Did you love him? Her smile faded. No. Did he love you? Maybe. That sounds complicated. It was honest, actually, more honest than we were sometimes. That hurt, but I understood it. Did he ask you to go? Yes. And? I said no. Immediately? Eventually. She looked at me. Apparently, some lessons require repetition. Coffee became lunch 2 weeks later. Lunch became occasional texts. Neither of us called it friendship because friendship between two people who had lived together and planned an imaginary wedding felt like a dishonest word. But we became part of each other's lives again in cautious pieces. Claire's father needed a wheelchair ramp temporarily during rehabilitation after another procedure. I designed one. Claire insisted on paying. I refused. She mailed my company a check for $1 with stubborn architect-adjacent person in the memo, despite the fact that I wasn't an architect. I framed it just to irritate her. When my mother had knee replacement surgery, Claire recommended a therapist and called twice to check on her. We began encountering each other at family events we once would have attended together. At Matt's engagement party, Claire and I spent almost the entire evening on opposite sides of the room until her mother cornered me near the dessert table. Patricia Morgan had always liked me until the breakup. Afterward, liked became a more complicated category. Daniel. Patricia. You look thin. That feels like a trap. You're still funny when nervous. Good to know. She glanced across the room toward Claire. She's glad you came. Matt invited me. Not what I said. Patricia. I'm old enough to ignore hints. You're 63. Exactly. She picked up a slice of cake and walked away before I could defend myself. Later that night, Claire found me outside on the patio. What did my mother say? That I'm thin. She means emotionally. That is alarming. She still blames both of us for the breakup. Both? Progress. For the first year, she blamed you. I suspected. Claire leaned against the railing. I blamed you too. I know. Do you know what changed? Time? Therapy. That seems less flattering. She laughed. My therapist asked why I described Charlotte as something you refused rather than something I chose. What did you say? That I was angry. Fair. Then she asked whether you ever told me I couldn't take the job. I didn't. I know. You wanted me to go. I wanted you to want to. That's different. Exactly. She looked at me. And I expected you to prove something without telling you what the test was. I was quiet. I did the same thing, I admitted. How? I kept waiting for you to say Nashville mattered enough to stay. I never asked whether you felt trapped here. I did sometimes. I know that now. Claire's shoulder touched mine briefly. Neither of us moved. We were very good at making reasonable decisions badly, she said. Professional talent? That evening was the first time I admitted privately that I still loved her. I did nothing with the information. The accident happened 4 months later. Claire called me at 10:27 on a Thursday night. I had just left a project dinner downtown. Before you ask, she said, I'm fine. That sentence usually means the opposite. I fell. Where? Parking garage. Are you alone? Technically. Claire. I'm at urgent care. I was already turning toward my truck. What happened? She had been leaving a late staff meeting when she stepped awkwardly off a curb in the parking structure and rolled her ankle. A coworker drove her to urgent care but had to leave because her babysitter was waiting. X-rays showed no fracture. Moderate sprain. Boot, crutches, rest. Do you need a ride? I asked. I was going to call Matt. He's in Chattanooga for the weekend. Right. Your parents. Mom doesn't drive after dark anymore unless necessary. Then I'm coming. Daniel, you don't have to. You called me. Silence. I know. 25 minutes later, I walked into urgent care and found Claire in a wheelchair wearing a medical boot and holding crutches with the expression of someone personally offended by gravity. You look dignified. Leave. I drove 25 minutes. Then stay long enough to insult me properly. The nurse handed me discharge instructions. Claire frowned. Why are you giving those to him? Because he looks responsible. That deceptive. I folded the papers. Can you walk? With crutches. She tried. 2 steps later, she winced. That looked excellent. Shut up. Your house has 3 steps. I know. Can you manage them? Probably. That word inspires confidence. The drive to her parents' house was unexpected. Why aren't we going to your apartment? I asked after she gave me the address. My building's elevator is under repair. Since when? Yesterday. You live on the 4th floor. Thank you for knowing numbers. So you're staying with your parents? For a few days. They know? Claire hesitated. Mom knows I might. Does she know you're coming tonight? I texted. And? Claire checked her phone, but no reply. Patricia normally went to bed early. We reached the house a little after 11. I parked close to the walkway. Claire opened her door and immediately stared at the crutches with suspicion. I can do it. You can barely put weight on your foot. I have crutches. You have wet pavement and 3 steps. Daniel. Claire. She glared at me. I hate when you do that. What? Use my name like the conversation has ended. It has. I walked around the vehicle and opened her door. Give me the crutches. What are you doing? Carrying you. Absolutely not. Why? Because that is ridiculous. Less ridiculous than you falling again. I can hop. That sentence eliminated your vote. You cannot eliminate my vote. Then vote. Claire stared at the wet walkway, then at her boot, then at me. Fine. Strong democratic outcome. If you drop me, I'm suing. I slid one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees. The moment I lifted her, both of us went quiet. Claire had been in my arms countless times during our relationship. I knew the instinctive way she hooked an arm around my shoulder. She knew how to shift her weight so I could carry her comfortably. Familiarity returned before either of us had permission to prepare for it. Okay? I asked. Yeah. Her voice was softer. I started toward the house. You're staring at the ground. Avoiding litigation. You're nervous. Your mother already thinks I destroyed your emotional future. She's diversified blame recently. Comforting. Claire laughed and tightened her arm around my shoulders when I stepped onto the porch. You're enjoying this, I said. I sprained my ankle. You're smiling. Because you look terrified. I'm carrying my ex-girlfriend into her parents' house at 11 at night. Technically, I ruined your life first. Helpful. She searched her purse for the key, then the door opened. Patricia Morgan stood there wearing a pale robe and slippers. Her eyes moved from Claire's boot to my face to Claire's arm around my shoulders. I knew it. Mom, Claire groaned. You two are back together. No, I said. Claire said. It's complicated. I looked at her. Complicated? Please get me inside before my ankle becomes a family tribunal. Patricia stepped aside with an expression that made it clear the tribunal had already begun. I carried Claire into the living room and lowered her carefully onto the sofa. Patricia disappeared toward the kitchen and returned with pillows, ice packs, pain medication, and enough questions to qualify as an investigation. How did this happen? Parking garage. And Daniel happened to be there? No. You called him. Claire closed her eyes. Yeah, Patricia looked at me. Interesting. Mom, I'm observing. Observe quietly. Patricia helped position the ice pack, then said, There's soup. I'm not hungry. Daniel? I'm good. Both of you are terrible liars? She walked toward the kitchen. Claire leaned her head against the sofa and whispered, I'm sorry. For the ankle? For my mother. She's less frightening than I remember. Patricia shouted from the kitchen. I can hear you. I withdraw the statement. Claire laughed. I should have left once she was settled. Instead, Patricia insisted the rain had started again and asked me to stay until it weakened. She also placed 2 bowls of soup on the table as though food created legal authority. Claire was tired from medication and pain. Her mother eventually went upstairs, but not before pointing at me and saying, Do not let her try to walk alone. Claire waited until the footsteps disappeared. She still likes you. That is not what her face says. Her face says she thinks we're idiots. That I believe. Claire ate half her soup. Why did you come tonight? You needed a ride. Matt could have found someone. He was 2 hours away. I could have called a rideshare. You called me. That's not an answer. It is literally the answer. Claire looked at me over the rim of her spoon. Why did you answer? Because it was you. The room became quiet. I hadn't planned the sentence. Claire set down the spoon. That's what I mean when I say complicated. What? This. Soup? Daniel. I'm trying not to assume. Fine. Why do you keep showing up? You keep calling. Why do I keep calling? I stared at her. I don't know. Yes, you do. She looked down at her hands. I called you before I called my brother, before my mother, before anyone. Because I was nearby? I didn't know where you were. That removed my easiest defense. Claire, tell me to stop. Stop what? Calling you when something happens, asking you for help, finding reasons to send you things, looking for you at family events even when I know you'll spend half the night avoiding me. My chest tightened. Do you want to stop? No, then why are you asking me? Because I need to know whether I'm rebuilding a relationship you don't actually want. I sat across from her. I don't know what we're rebuilding. That's an honest answer. Is it enough? Tonight, maybe. She leaned back, visibly tired. I'm not asking you to get back together because I sprained my ankle. Good. That would be an unusual diagnostic criterion. She smiled. I am saying I don't think we're friends. No. And we aren't strangers. Definitely not. So what are we? Two people who loved each other and never finished deciding what that means now. Claire's eyes filled slightly. That's annoyingly accurate. Occupational skill. You build hotels. Still involves unresolved problems. She reached toward the coffee table for her water, winced, and I handed it to her. Our fingers touched. Neither of us pulled away immediately. Stay until I fall asleep? She asked. I hesitated. On the sofa, she added. I understood. You looked alarmed. Your mother is upstairs. Claire laughed. There's the real fear. I stayed. She fell asleep 20 minutes later. I covered her with a blanket and left a note for Patricia before going home. The next morning, Patricia called me at 8. Did you propose? Were her first words. Good morning. Claire says nothing happened. Because nothing happened. She called you. Apparently. You carried her inside. Her ankle is injured. You stayed. She fell asleep. Patricia sighed dramatically. You young people make everything difficult. I'm 37. Exactly. Too old for this nonsense. Is Claire okay? Patricia's voice softened. She's fine. Grumpy. The swelling is worse, which the doctor said to expect. Good. Daniel? Yes? I was angry with you after the breakup. I noticed. I was angry with her too. She just didn't hear that part. Why are you telling me? Because last night she looked happier being embarrassed in your arms than she has looked on half the dates I've heard about since Charlotte. Patricia, I'm not telling you what to do. It sounds suspiciously like it. I'm telling you not to pretend there's nothing there just because you're afraid of getting it wrong twice. Then she hung up. Apparently direct communication was a Morgan family trait that Claire and I had somehow avoided learning from. Claire's ankle forced us into proximity over the next 2 weeks. She couldn't drive. Her parents could help, but Patricia had arthritis and her father was still recovering from heart surgery. Matt traveled constantly for work. Claire refused to let me become her chauffeur until I pointed out that I passed near her clinic on my way to a project site 3 mornings a week. You're weaponizing geography, she said. Efficient logistics. You always make emotional decisions sound like routing problems. I'm driving you to work. Fine. Those morning drives became dangerous because they felt ordinary. Coffee and cup holders, Claire adjusting the radio, arguments about traffic. She remembered I hated sweet coffee and started bringing mine black. I remembered she became nauseated if she took anti-inflammatory medication without eating and kept granola bars in the truck. The intimacy wasn't physical, it was worse. It was history returning in useful forms. One morning she said, "This is what I missed. Traffic? Us before everything became a negotiation. We always negotiated." Not like that. She looked out the window. Remember when we first started dating and you drove across town because my furnace stopped working? You were convinced the house was going to freeze. It was 28 degrees. Outdoors. Still, you called me instead of a repair company. I liked you. You had known me 3 weeks. Exactly. I was efficient once. We both laughed. Then Claire became serious. When did being together stop feeling easy? Probably when we started treating every future question like a referendum on the relationship. Marriage, career, children. That one sat between us. Children had been one of the unspoken issues in our relationship. Claire had always said she probably wanted them. I had always said someday. By the time we were 4 years in, someday had become avoidance. After returning to Claire was 35. Time had turned a theoretical conversation into something less abstract. I brought it up first. Do you still want kids? We were parked outside her clinic. Claire stared at me. That is an aggressive 7:30 a.m. question. You mentioned future questions. I did. She unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't open the door. Maybe. That sounds different. It is. Why? Because I spent years treating motherhood like something I needed to decide before I was allowed to choose anything else. Now I know I want a relationship and a life I like whether children happen or not. Do you regret waiting? Sometimes. Because of me? Claire looked directly at me. Partly. I absorbed that without defending myself. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for an apology. I know. What about you? I think I avoided the question because saying yes felt like committing to a version of life I couldn't revise. That sounds like you. Therapy. Finally. Don't celebrate. Claire smiled. Do you want children now? Maybe. She laughed. Very helpful. Honest. Better. She opened the door. Before getting out, she said, if we ever try again, I'm not accepting someday as an answer to everything. Fair. That wasn't a proposal. I know. Good. The pressure arrived from outside anyway. Claire's ex from Charlotte, Aaron, came to Nashville for a healthcare conference. She told me before seeing him. He asked to have dinner. Are you going? Yes. I hated my immediate reaction and disliked myself more for trying to hide it. Okay. Claire watched me. Say the real thing. I don't want you to. Better. That doesn't mean I'm telling you not to. Also better. Why are you seeing him? Because he's been offered a position here, Bapku. My stomach tightened. Nashville? Yes, that's convenient. Don't. I'm not accusing him of anything. Your face is. My face has limited legal significance. Claire sighed. Aaron and I ended because I didn't want Atlanta. He respected that. We've been friendly occasionally. Does he want you back? I don't know. Do you want him back? No. The answer came fast. Then why does this matter? Because I don't want to become the woman who avoids every past relationship just to reassure the man she might be dating again. Might? Claire smiled slightly. See? You heard that part. She went to dinner. I spent the evening pretending I wasn't checking the time. At 10:30, she texted, home. Dinner was fine. He's moving here. Nothing romantic happened. I responded, I didn't ask. She wrote, you were going to. I stared at the screen and laughed. Aaron's return mattered less because of jealousy and more because of what he represented. He was a good man. When I eventually met him at a fundraiser Claire organized, he shook my hand and said, I've heard a lot about you. Recently. Historically. That sounds dangerous. Aaron smiled. Later, while Claire spoke to donors, he stood beside me near the bar. You two getting back together? He asked. I nearly dropped my drink. Direct. Claire appreciates directness. Apparently everyone knows that except me. For what it's worth, she never stopped comparing relationships to yours. That isn't necessarily flattering. It wasn't always. I laughed. Aaron became serious. She loved you, probably still does. Why are you telling me? Because I spent 6 months thinking I could outperform a relationship that had ended instead of asking whether she was emotionally available. That was my mistake. Do you still want her? No, I want someone who chooses me without needing to prove anything to herself. He nodded toward Claire. She deserves the same. That conversation unsettled me because there was no rival to defeat. Aaron was simply evidence that waiting had consequences beyond Claire and me. 3 weeks after the ankle injury, Claire stopped wearing the boot. I drove her home from a follow-up appointment. This time we went to her apartment. She walked slowly but independently. At the door, she turned toward me. You don't have to carry me. Disappointing. I knew you enjoyed it. Your mother did. She still tells people she caught us. Doing what? Apparently existing suspiciously. We laughed. Then the familiar tension returned. Daniel. Yeah? My ankle is better. Medical miracle. Which means you no longer have a logistical excuse to keep appearing. I can invent one. Don't. She looked at me carefully. If you want to see me at, I understood. Dinner Friday. As what? A date. Claire's expression softened. You're sure? No, miss. She frowned. Wrong answer? I asked. Explain. I'm sure I want the date. I'm not sure what happens after it. Good. Good. That's the first time you've admitted uncertainty without using it as a reason to postpone. Growth. Painful? Extremely. Friday. Our second first date happened at a restaurant downtown where we had gone once years earlier after signing the lease on our shared apartment. Claire remembered immediately. You chose this on purpose. Maybe. Dangerous nostalgia strategy. We can leave. No. We stayed. The evening began with humor and then became increasingly honest. We talked about Charlotte without litigating it. Claire admitted she had partially accepted the job because she wanted to force a decision. I thought if the opportunity was big enough, you'd finally say what I wanted to hear. Which was that you wanted a future with me enough to disrupt yours. I did want a future. You kept describing it instead of choosing it. True. Your turn. I thought if you really wanted us, you would reject Charlotte without making me ask. Claire closed her eyes. We were exhausting. Very. Do you think we would have married if Charlotte never happened? Probably. Would that marriage have worked? I thought carefully. Not unless we changed. That's what I think, too. We talked about children, careers, money, family. Not because we were planning marriage after one restarted date, but because pretending those subjects didn't exist had already cost us years. At the end of dinner, I walked Claire to her car. Can I kiss you? I asked. She smiled. You used to just do it. We used to assume too much. Good answer. So? Yes. I kissed her. It felt nothing like nostalgia. It felt like meeting someone I knew with information I had never bothered to learn. For 6 months, we dated carefully but not secretly. Patricia celebrated with so little subtlety that Claire threatened to stop visiting. Matt told me, if this fails again, I'm moving to another family. My mother hugged Claire the first time she saw us together, and later asked me whether I was finally going to stop overthinking everything. No one trusted our emotional competence fairly. Claire and I set one rule: major opportunities got discussed before decisions, even when we didn't know what we wanted. That rule was tested sooner than expected. My company offered me oversight of a major mixed-use development in Dallas. 2-year assignment, substantial raise, potential vice president role afterward. The old version of me would have researched every possible arrangement before telling Claire. I called her 15 minutes after the meeting. Dallas. What? Job opportunity. Silence. You're telling me immediately. I hate it already. Good. Can we talk tonight? Yes. That evening I explained everything. Do you want it? She asked. Professionally, yes. Do you want Dallas? Not really. Do you want me to come? That question scared me. If I accept, I want you involved in deciding whether that makes sense. That wasn't the question. Claire. Say the preference. Yes, I would want you there. Her eyes filled slightly. Thank you. Would you go? I don't know. Fair. For 2 weeks, we explored options. Claire's clinic had no Dallas operation. She could find work, but she had just begun developing an outpatient program in Nashville she cared deeply about. I could travel weekly, but 2 years of flights sounded dangerously similar to Charlotte. We considered everything and found no perfect solution. Then my company offered an alternative. Oversee Dallas from Nashville with 12 travel days per month and a smaller promotion. My pride disliked it, my life preferred it. Claire refused to tell me which offer to take. You have an opinion, I said. Of course. Tell me. I want you here. And I don't want you choosing the smaller role and quietly resenting me. That's fair. Do you want the vice president track? I want leadership. I don't actually want Dallas. Then stop making title and desire the same thing. I accepted the Nashville-based role. It cost me money. It also gave me a career I wanted in a city I wanted. 6 months later, I stopped wondering whether the other option would have been better, not because I never thought about it, but because missing an opportunity and regretting a decision are not identical. Claire faced her own decision the following year. Her clinic received funding to create a pediatric rehabilitation center, and she was offered executive director. The role required less direct therapy and more administration. Everyone assumed she would accept. She wasn't sure. "This is what I wanted in Charlotte," she said while we sat in my kitchen. "Is it? Leadership? Program design? But I would barely see patients. Does that matter?" "More than I expected." "Then don't accept because younger Claire would have." She laughed softly. "That is annoying. I learned from you. Do you want me to take it?" "I want you happy." "Wrong," I sighed. "I want the schedule." "There. Predictable evenings would be nice." "Thank you. But I also know you become unbearable when you miss clinical work." "Also true?" Claire negotiated a different role, clinical director with shared administrative leadership. Less prestigious, better fit. Neither of us treated compromise as failure anymore. The real near loss arrived not through geography, but trust. Almost 2 years after we restarted, Claire learned she might have difficulty having children. A routine medical appointment led to testing. She told me only after meeting with a specialist twice. When she finally sat across from me and explained, I felt fear, sadness, and then anger. "You knew for a month. I needed time. Without me. Daniel, we said major things before decisions. There is no decision yet. There is absolutely a decision about whether I'm included." Claire's face hardened. "This is my body. I know. Then don't turn my medical information into a relationship contract." "I'm not." "You sound like you are." I stood and paced the kitchen. "I'm scared." That stopped her. "I'm scared you decided I should only know once you understood what the information might cost me." Claire looked down. "Maybe I did." "Why?" "Because you said maybe about children. Years ago." "Still. Do you think I'm going to leave because pregnancy may be difficult?" "I don't know." "Then ask me instead of protecting me from the question." Claire started crying quietly. "I was afraid if having children mattered more to you than you admitted. I would become another future you had to give up because of me." I sat beside her. "I don't know what I want about children. I do know I want you." "That isn't the same as marriage." "I know. Or forever." "I know." "Then don't say things because I'm scared." "I'm saying them because I'm tired of acting like certainty is required before truth." I took her hand. "If we decide we want children, we'll learn what options exist. If we decide we don't, that's ours too. But I'm not leaving the relationship because a doctor gave us complicated information." Claire leaned against me. We didn't solve anything that night. That was the point. 3 months later, I proposed. Not because of the medical news, and I made sure Claire understood that. I waited until her 37th birthday. Her parents hosted dinner at the same house where Patricia had opened the door 2 years earlier and found Claire in my arms. After everyone left, Claire and I stood on the front porch. She had stopped wearing the ankle brace long ago, but Patricia had kept the old crutches in the garage for reasons nobody understood. "Your mother still tells that story," I said. "She claims she predicted everything. She said, I knew it before anything happened. Details do not constrain her." I looked at the walkway. "Do you remember asking me to carry you?" "You volunteered." "You surrendered after extensive negotiations." "Correct." I thought the dangerous part was how familiar it felt. Claire looked at me. "What was the dangerous part?" "Realizing familiarity wasn't the reason I still wanted you." Her expression changed. I reached into my jacket. "Daniel, I spent years thinking commitment meant choosing a future so specifically that nothing could surprise me. That made me postpone decisions until life made them for us. Charlotte made one. Our breakup made another. I don't want to live like that anymore." I opened the ring box. "I don't know whether we'll have children. I don't know what jobs we'll have in 10 years. I don't know whether Nashville will always be home. I do know I want you inside every one of those questions." Claire was already crying. "That's annoyingly good." I practiced. "Obviously. Claire Morgan, will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at me. "Are you sure?" The question could have pulled me back into every old habit. Instead, I laughed. "No." She stared. Daniel, I'm sure I love you. I'm sure I want to marry you. I'm not sure about everything that comes after. That's the point. Claire covered her mouth and laughed through tears. Then yes. Explicitly? Yes, Daniel, I will marry you. Patricia opened the door before I had finished putting the ring on Claire's finger. I knew it! She shouted. Claire spun around. Mom! I saw you through the window. Were you watching us? This is my house. You went upstairs 20 minutes ago. I came down for water. You are impossible. Patricia ran outside in slippers, hugged Claire, then hugged me with enough force to nearly knock the ring box from my hand. Her father appeared behind her, looking tired but smiling. Did she interrupt? He asked. After the yes, I said. Then you got lucky. Patricia ignored us and held Claire's hand under the porch light. Beautiful. Claire looked at me. You realize this family has no boundaries. I've known for years. Too late now. Apparently. I kissed her while Patricia loudly announced that she was going inside to give us privacy, a claim none of us believed. We married the following spring in Nashville. Aaron sent Claire a congratulatory card. Matt was one of my groomsmen and told everyone during his toast that his sister and I had required 2 relationships, 1 breakup, 3 states, a sprained ankle, and professional counseling to learn basic communication. Patricia shouted, and a mother with good instincts. Claire hid her face against my shoulder. My parents laughed. The wedding was simple. We did not promise never to disappoint each other, or never to move, or never to change, but we promised to speak before circumstances became decisions. We promised not to make the other person guess which sacrifice counted as proof. We promised that preference was allowed without becoming command and uncertainty was allowed without becoming avoidance. Children remained uncertain. After another year, Claire and I decided we wanted to try. It wasn't easy. There were medical appointments, disappointment, and one early pregnancy loss that left both of us quieter than either expected. For several months, we stopped trying. Claire asked whether I regretted marrying her. No. You answered too fast. Because it's easy. Do you regret not choosing someone younger who might have made this easier? No. Daniel. Claire, do not turn grief into a hypothetical replacement woman. She started crying. I hate that you're right. I learned from the best. Eventually, we decided that parenthood mattered more than biology. 2 years after our wedding, we became foster parents to an 8-year-old boy named Lucas. 11 months later, we adopted him. Parenthood rearranged our lives more completely than any relocation ever could. Claire reduced administrative duties temporarily. I changed travel schedules. Neither change was perfectly equal. Both were discussed before resentment could become principle. One evening when Lucas was 10, he twisted his ankle during soccer practice. The injury was minor, but he dramatically announced he could not possibly walk from the car. Claire looked at me. Do not. I didn't say anything. Lucas held out both arms. Dad? I laughed and lifted him. Claire followed us up the walkway. This feels familiar, she said. Different weight category. You carried me more gracefully. You threatened litigation. Lucas looked between us. What are you talking about? Claire smiled. Your dad carried me into Grandma's house once. Why? Sprained ankle. Were you married? No. Dating? I said, technically no. Claire said, emotionally questionable. Lucas frowned. Adults are weird. Correct, I said. Patricia opened the door before we knocked. She saw Lucas in my arms and shouted, not again. We all started laughing. Years later, the night I carried Claire into her parents' house became family mythology. Patricia told the story at anniversaries as though she had personally engineered our reconciliation. Claire insisted the ankle injury had nothing to do with us getting back together. I argued that without it, we might have taken another 6 months to admit anything. Both versions contained truth. The sprain didn't create the feelings, it removed our ability to pretend the relationship was comfortably undefined. Claire called me because somewhere beneath every careful boundary, I was still the person she trusted when something went wrong. I came because after 2 years of telling myself I had moved on, her voice could still change the direction of my night without requiring an explanation. That was the deeper problem we had failed to understand the first time we loved each other. We believed a commitment had to be proved through dramatic sacrifice. Claire wanted me to leave Nashville to prove she mattered. I wanted her to stay to prove I mattered. Neither of us knew how to say, I want this and I know you may want something different. By the time we tried again, we had learned that the strongest relationships are not the ones where two people always choose the same thing. They are the ones where both people are allowed to bring their entire preference into the room before anyone chooses. Claire still occasionally asks me to carry her. Usually it is a joke. Once, after a long hospital fundraiser when her shoes had destroyed her feet, she stopped beside our front steps and held out her arms. Absolutely not, I said. In sickness and in health. That is not what vows mean. My feet hurt. You're wearing shoes you chose. For you. I told you sneakers were fine. Daniel. I carried her anyway. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders and smiled. Still nervous? About your mother opening the door? Always. She lives 20 minutes away. That woman has range. Claire laughed and kissed my cheek. Lucas, now a teenager, opened the door and stared at us. Seriously? Your mother is injured, I said, Claire whispered. Emotionally. Lucas shook his head and walked away. Adults, he muttered. Still weird. My ex-girlfriend asked me to carry her into the house because she had sprained her ankle, and her mother opened the door and caught us. At the time, I thought being caught was the embarrassing part. It wasn't. The difficult part was realizing there was something to catch. Not a secret relationship, not a betrayal, but a connection. Neither of us had honestly ended. We had broken up because the versions of ourselves we were then didn't know how to make room for two ambitions, two fears, and one shared future without turning every compromise into evidence of who loved more. When we found each other again, we didn't succeed because the circumstances became easier. We succeeded because we became more honest before the circumstances made decisions for us. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me what you think. If an ex you once deeply loved called you for help late at night, would you keep the past safely closed? Or would you risk discovering whether the relationship ended because the love was gone? Or because neither of you knew how to choose it the first time?